So in order to proceed here, we need to get the fuel line off of the carburetor. So you're going to back this little clamp off. That fuel line may or may not be stuck on the inlet, but on this one it's not too bad. Get a good grip on it, and a lot of times you can just wiggle this thing off and give it a little twist too. Sometimes it helps break the seal that's on there. Just remember, as soon as this line comes off, you're going to have fuel coming out of that line because it's directly connected to the gas tank. If there's not a lot of gas in it, you can just point the line up and keep the fuel in there. But if your tank is really full, you may want to have something handy to plug the line with, a small bolt or something like that. Before you go taking the carburetor off the engine, you want to pay good attention to where the spring's connected, where the linkage is connected on both sides, both at the carburetor, or as you Brits say, the carburetor. So once you get that spring loosened, you can just ease this carburetor off these studs. And then when you get it out to the end of the stud, you can go ahead and take this gasket off before it falls off. And there's your little carburetor. Now you can angle it to get this rod out. And then on this particular carburetor, this rod just pulls straight up and out. Takes a little bit of force to get it to come out. Well, on this carburetor, you can tell this thing is fairly clean. This mower is not that old. But one of the first things that I saw when my neighbor brought this over was that, or one of the things that I know was that this mower had been sitting outside when it had rained one night, and I am thinking that there might be a little bit of water inside this carburetor, which may be why it's not running. So I'm going to check that fuel tank too, drain that fuel out, and see if we see any water in there. But that's my guess, given no older than this engine is, and the general cleanliness of it. So next step is going to be take the fuel bowl off. This is going to require a 10mm socket. This one, if you're wondering, is just merely a drain plug for this bowl. I'm just going to go ahead and take this off, and then we'll remove the bowl. Okay, as soon as you open her up, she's going to start leaking fuel. As soon as you get that center bolt out, and most of the fuel will drain out from there, this bowl is going to slide right off. Now, even though you probably can't see it in this video because all the fuel is drained out, I can tell you there is not entirely clean fuel that was in here, and I think there might have been some water in here, but we're going to go ahead and clean it out. I'll show you some of the basic parts of the carburetor, and then we'll put her back together. And then on the inside here too, you can see clearly that other bolt in there is just a drain plug for the bowl. That's all it is. So you can drain it out first before you take the bowl off if you want, or you can just do it the way I did it. So just like most of these small engines that have a needle, float, and seat arrangement, as soon as you get that bowl off, check for proper operation of the float. See if it goes up and down without binding. Next step is we're going to take that float off, which means this pin right here. This pin, we're going to push it out, and on this setup, you see here the pin is coming out. There's a bushing right here. This is probably going to fall out of the center while the pin comes out this way. So just keep track of all your little parts. It's not a bushing, it's part of the float itself. Okay, so we'll let this float come down, and you'll see the needle come out with it. Okay, so there's the needle, that kind of bullet-shaped piece there. Okay, so there's our float, and there's our needle. And then inside this brass piece, that is our seat. And it looks in good condition to me. You can see in here, I don't see anything in there blocking it. I don't see anything in this center jet here that looks clogged up at all. I think he just had a little bit of water in here. I'm going to go ahead and spritz it down. We'll make sure, like I've said in my other videos, if I spray carb cleaner down this, I should see it coming out somewhere inside here. If I spray carb cleaner in here, I should see it coming out an orifice somewhere here. If you're spraying it inside, like here too, here's one. I'll probably run my carb cleaner brushes down these various orifices, make sure they're completely clean. I'll spray carb cleaner in there and make sure they're good to go. You can see in here, inside this center, I guess jet if you will, there is a slot in that brass for a screwdriver, and you can probably take that out and it's replaceable. I've done that on old 2-cylinder John Deere tractors before, and that actually, if I remember correctly, is how you replace the seat in them. So you actually have to unscrew that brass, but in here, this is the seat on this carburetor here. And I figure I should show you on this setup here. This is a fairly fancy needle here. It's got like a spring keeper on here, so it doesn't just fall off the float, unlike some of the other small, usually the Briggs & Stratton motors are the ones I work on. It's also, down there at the very tip, you see that very small piece coming out of the center. That's spring loaded. So this thing, I guess, has a bit of a cushion as it operates. Probably fairly expensive if you lose this or break it, or if it needs to be replaced, so be careful with it. And you can see here the rubber tip on there should have that conical shape to it, no chunks missing, nothing hanging onto it. That's what it should look like. The float itself should be empty. You shouldn't hear or feel anything sloshing around in it, no obvious holes in it or anything like that. If there's any gas or liquid in there at all, it's going to sink, it's not going to float, hence the name float, and your carburetor is going to flood out. So if you have to replace it, so if you have any of that, you have to replace it. And for those that haven't seen some of my other videos, these are my little jet cleaning, carburetor cleaning, jet cleaning brushes. Got on eBay for about $1. And then just find the right size and shove it in the hole, make sure it's clean. Yeah, there's one passageway way down in here. Know that it's there, and know that you're going to have a hard time cleaning it with a with a cleaning method like this. And if you think it's clogged up, you may have to let this thing soak in some of the industrial carb cleaner that comes in like that 1-gallon bucket. And once you think you have everything, pretty well cleaned out with those jet brushes, I just take some of this stuff. This is CRC throttle body and air intake cleaner. Any kind of carb cleaner will work. And then I start squirting it down every single orifice that I can find, and just see if it blows back at me. Means I probably have an issue. If it comes out another orifice, then it's probably good to go. So you shoot it down this center one. It should come out. You should see it come out here by the butterfly, and it certainly is. You probably can't see it. You shoot it in here where the needle goes into the seat. We should see it come out of here, out of the intake to the fuel, for the fuel tank, and we do. Let's throw some in here and see what happens. Okay, now it comes out of here, and that one I was showing you earlier. And then don't forget you have one here on the engine side of this carburetor too. And I honestly have no idea where that one goes, but it's not coming back at me. So I'm going to say that this is probably clean enough, and we'll throw it back together and see what happens. And the needle is going to go into the seat like so, and the float will hang right there while we get our pin in place. And then get the pin centered in there between the posts, and then make sure your float goes up and down real easy. It does. And then, as I've shown before in some of the other videos, you want to make sure that it's working. You can blow on this fuel input here, move this float up and down, and you should hear the air go on and off. working like a champ. So we'll put the bowl on next. Black O-ring here is in good condition, that it's seated on there appropriately. It's not rolled over, it's not going to roll off, it's not cracked and broken. And then slide your bowl up on over the carb. You've got your retaining bolt here. Make sure it's got a gasket on it, in good shape, not missing. 10mm socket. You don't have to go super tight on this now. Remember, that's just a thin rubber seal keeping that fuel in there. We don't want to mess that up. Okay, if it's leaking, you can always tighten it down a little more. Then we're ready to go back on the engine. Okay, pop your linkage back into place. Put your spring on like so. Slide this pesky gasket back on here. Okay, and then we're ready to hook our fuel line back up. I know I didn't show this, but I went ahead. I already drained this fuel tank out, and there was a little bit of water in there, so I know that was the problem with this carburetor. Easy fix. Got to it before it caused any corrosion, any big problems. I'm not sure why so much collected in the bottom of that carburetor bowl, but it did, and stopped the engine from running. Or at least that's what I think. I'm pretty sure we get it back together. I'm going to give it a pull, and it's going to run great. But we're going to slide this hose back over the inlet. Okay, and then once you get the hose on there, you can go ahead and just position this tank just to get it kind of out of your way. Okay, get your clamp in place. Now we get to put our primer assembly and our air filter assembly back on here. Remember that this hose goes onto the carburetor right here, so that probably runs our primer. This bigger one goes right up on here under the cover of the engine. And there's no clamps on either one of these, not needed. You got your two 10mm nuts right here. This does not have to be smoked down, okay? And you can put your air cleaner back on, and then put your air cleaner cover back on. Okay, and that's that. Then all we have to do is get our top pull starter back on here, which I actually just placed it on there and it just almost clicked into place. You may have to fiddle with your line until we'll get the starter pull lined up with the fins on the flywheel. Okay, no big deal, just pull your rope, twist this thing around and get it to sit down on those studs, and then put your 3 10mm nuts back on here. Alright, now let's push it out in the yard. We'll hit the primer bulb, it says 3 times on there, and see if it'll run. It's got fresh gas in it. There we have it. Good as new. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments.